Angus Taylor, congratulations on your budget in reply. There is, as we know, a one nation wave sweeping through Liberal-held electorates, extinction level according to the polls. Are you laying out your plan tonight to stop their momentum?
No, Sarah, and thank you for having me. I'm laying out our plan for Australia, for our nation, at a time when the standard of living is going backwards. People are deeply worried about the direction of the country. They're deeply worried about their own incomes and their families and their future. And so that's why we've laid out a pathway for a fairer, freer, better Australia, one with lower taxes, one that's not got an assault on aspiration like we see under Labor, but supports aspiration with significant tax cuts, not just getting rid of Labor's toxic taxes, but I think the very worst tax of all, which is the one that goes up every single year because of inflation. And that is a big impost on Australians. It's holding them back, and we will get rid of it. We'll also align immigration with housing, get housing supply up, but make sure immigration numbers are such that we can support them with housing. And we'll make sure that we've got affordable, abundant energy, and we put Australians first. That's the focus.
All right, there are clearly two twin key concerns here. Tax, which we'll come to, on immigration first of all, because we are having this conversation with that cloud of one nation hanging over the Liberal Party. Why the attack on permanent residents in this speech who work and pay tax the same as citizens? Well,
it's about putting Australian citizens first, and that's the duty of a government, to put Australian citizens first. And I think it's extraordinary that at a time like this, the government has cut support for older Australians' private health insurance, and yet there is welfare for non-Australian citizens. Sarah,
just to be clear, these are permanent residents who pay tax and in many cases are waiting to become citizens. So why focus on them?
Well, citizenship is a privilege, and it's something we want people to get something from. If you contribute to this country, we want to contribute back, and that's what citizenship is all about. But when you have a situation where someone can come and get all the benefits without that, it becomes meaningless, Sarah. And the truth is, if you ask Australians whether people can get access to welfare programs without being citizens, they'd say they can't, but they actually are, and it's costing the country a great deal. So this is 17 different programs. There's appropriate exemptions in compassionate circumstances, but importantly, it's saying that we're going to put Australian citizens first, not rip money out of private health insurance for older Australians or veterans.
These measures for migrants, as you say, they are about focusing on the idea of citizenship, pushing people, if you like, towards citizenship. However, for some countries, particularly people from China and India, in order to become Australian citizens, they have to renounce their Indian or Chinese citizenship. And there are grave concerns amongst people in that community that they would lose assets. Now, what's your message to the very large Indian and Chinese diaspora this evening, listening to you saying that you will force them to give up their citizenship if they want to receive any of these welfare benefits? You want them to give up those citizenships and potentially lose their assets. What's your message to them?
We're not forcing anyone to give up anything, Sarah. We're saying that if you want access to the privileges of, which we believe should be privileges of citizenship, you need to become a citizen. So you need to make a choice. It's very simple. And the idea that someone should arrive and the moment they arrive here, get access to family tax benefit, for instance, I think for Australians, that's just not on at a time like this when we're really struggling. We were approaching $1 trillion of debt under Labor. Australians are struggling with their own household budgets. We're seeing cutbacks, extra taxes being imposed on housing, on savings, on farmers.
I was asking you to address your answer to that specific group of people, the Chinese and the Indian diasporas, because obviously, at the last election, the Liberal Party suffered significant losses in those communities. They felt there had been intemperate attacks on them. So it makes me wonder how bad the threat must feel from one nation to risk angering those communities again.
Sarah, I welcome those communities who come to this country and want to build businesses and build careers and do things in our country and become Australians. That's the pathway. I mean, I grew up in one of the great immigrant towns of Australia, not far south of here, where we saw thousands of people come to that town, Cooma, after the Second World War, and it was an extraordinary place to grow up. But what it made it so extraordinary was the people who came wanted to be part of our country. They wanted to become Australians. That's the model of immigration and citizenship that I want to see.
The group of people that you're talking about, as I said, these are tax-paying permanent residents, many of whom are waiting to become citizens. They already face a 2 or 4 year waiting period for welfare as things stand. Why do you want to further penalise that group by restricting access to welfare completely?
Sarah, access to citizenship comes after 4 years of being here and only 1 year of permanent residency. This is not a high threshold. So the real issue is this. It's true that
you are proposing to take welfare away from people in that group at that time, in a period of global competition for skilled migrants. Have you modelled how many skilled migrants might leave Australia because of the conditions you want to create?
Well, Sarah, there's always a long queue of people wanting to come to this country. It's because it's, I believe, the greatest country on earth. But if people come to this country in order to receive welfare in the first couple of years of being here, perhaps that's not an appropriate circumstance.
When you say in order to, are you suggesting they come here to get the welfare?
But at the end of the day, Sarah, it's appropriate that people come here, spend some time and become a citizen over time, and then they get access to the privileges of citizenship. That's how most countries in the world work. It's completely appropriate that we should do the same. And this is, look, the extraordinary thing about this is how many Australians have said to me in recent weeks, as I've been talking to people about this, I had no idea that non-citizens could get access to 17 of these welfare programs soon after they arrive in the country. Now, we have a very generous welfare system in this country, a very generous safety net, social safety net, and that's appropriate. But it's also appropriate
to take it away from permanent residents who are planning lives, careers, families in Australia, contributing to Australia.
We are not taking anything away from anyone, Sarah. This will be grandfathered. We've been very clear about that. So that's actually incorrect. It is grandfathered. And once you become a citizen, you get full access to those programs.
You've promised one of the biggest cuts to immigration in Australia's history was the language that you used. A statement as bold as that demands a number.
Sure.
What's your number?
Well, what you will see from our number is a cut of more than 70% since the peak under Labor.
That's 100.
More than 40%.
That's 150,000. Is that your number?
Can I answer the question?
Please.
I'm trying. 40% on the current level. And the truth is the right number will depend on how many houses get built. I mean, this is the whole problem. This government thought that they could pick the right number without knowing how many houses that were going to get built. And the truth is, not enough houses have been built for the numbers they said.
We're talking about a statement that you made in your speech tonight, and I say that having asked you a couple of questions about One Nation. One of the biggest cuts to immigration in Australia's history. As I said, a statement as bold as that requires a number to be put next to it. Otherwise, it's a slogan. Your maths on the numbers you just referred to is 150,000. Is that your planned net overseas migration number?
Sarah, I've given you those numbers, and I don't know who's done those calculations for you, but the truth is,
saying that's wrong?
The truth is that we had immigration at 550,000 under this government. 550,000. Before that, well, that's where it peaked. And so we need to get down to a number.
With settings, we've discussed this before, those were settings put in place by your government.
This is the sort of nonsense this government...
This is a question about numbers.
I'd really like to finish, Sarah.
Yes.
This is nonsense.
I'd like you to answer the question about numbers.
Well, I will, and I'm answering the question, but you've just got to give me a go to answer it. This is complete nonsense you hear from this government. Absolute, utter nonsense. They were the government, and the peak got to 550,000 people. There is no way in this country that houses could support that number. The two numbers have to be linked. And so what we're proposing is each year the housing minister would say we've got this many houses available, and so the right number, or the cap, should be an appropriate number to suit that. Now, we know already, based on what we are seeing, that number is likely to be 70% down from the peak, roughly 40% down from where we are now. And I've said, we've got some catch up to do too, because frankly what's happened is Labor has failed so miserably on their housing targets and been so far above their immigration targets that we've got to get catch up.
Right,
this will allow young Australians to get into a home, Sarah, and that is the most important objective we have here.
I'd like to note you've made a big statement in your speech. You're not prepared to back it up with numbers, even though you know...
I've just given you the numbers.
Well, you haven't given me the final.
Well, Sarah, I've said what the number will be. It will be based on the number of houses that are built. Now, I'll ask you, well, if I may, how many houses will Labor build in a couple of years' time? If I was to guess...
You can put those questions to Labor. Let me ask you a different question. Let's move on. If you're going to make a very substantial cut, which you have signalled very clearly in your speech tonight, and on the numbers that you have given me, we're calculating that at about 150,000 as your total number. So you only have a small number of levers available to you to cut the net overseas migration number. Cutting international students, working holiday visas, which the Nationals oppose, and New Zealanders. So which of those levers are you going to pull to make a massive cut in immigration?
Well, Sarah, as I said, we'll give a number in the lead up to the next election.
This is about...
I've given the principle, well, if I can finish, I've given you a very clear principle. It will be a very substantial reduction because there is no way that the government is going to get their housing completions up to a level that's going to give a bigger number than that.
This is a
it
question...
will be, if I may answer, it will be below 200,000. There's no doubt about that. And then the right mix will depend on the circumstances at the time. What is clear is that the number of students in this country has been at record levels. This government lost control of that situation.
So you will be targeting international students.
I'm just saying that that's one area that is obvious for us to look at. There's no question about it.
Will you exclude working holiday visas?
Well, as I say, the number of temporary visas has increased dramatically under this government, and that's been part of the housing crisis.
So working holiday visas are also on the table?
I'm saying temporary visas obviously is a big part of the explosion.
Does that include working holiday visas?
Well, as I say, Sarah, we will lay out the individual visa numbers as we get close to the election. The process we have laid out is that as we see the housing completions, we'll set a cap, and then the visa numbers will fit within that cap.
How do you put a hard cap on net overseas migration when it includes Australian citizens who are free to come and go?
Well, you can make reasonable predictions about what those things are going to be, Sarah.
So if you can forecast, so if you can forecast, then you probably already have in your head some idea of how those numbers are going to break down.
Well, Sarah, what we don't know is how many houses we're going to get. And what I do know about this government is they've completely failed to reach their housing targets time and time again. So we will see what they deliver on that. They're sitting on around 170,000 now. That's well below the numbers that we saw when we were in government. They have completely failed to meet their own housing targets. We're on about 70,000 houses a year less than they should be getting to on their own targets, and we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of years. But I tell you one thing I'm not going to do. I am not going to allow the net overseas migration get to a number which is beyond the housing we have in this country.
I want to move on to tax indexation, noting that we don't have any numbers from you after that bold statement. But on tax indexation, this is a big move. This is something that tax experts around the country have wanted for a very long time. No side of politics has wanted to do this. You've decided to do it. So what will it cost the budget's bottom line over those 4 years?
Well, the biggest thing is what it's going to cost hardworking Australians. So I do want to start here because this is important. What you will see from bracket creep is in the first year, $250 at the target inflation rate, 2.5%.
Just on that, are you going to, would you repeal the WATO, the new tax that the government's brought in?
We've said we'll support. We'll support that initiative. We've said that, but the fact of the matter is it goes from $250 for a typical earner, someone on about $70,000, $500, $750, $1,000. This is the thief in the night, Sarah. This is actually how Labor generates revenues. It raises taxes on people, and the higher inflation goes, the higher the number. Those numbers double if inflation's sitting at the current level at 5%. So it is true that there is a cost to that.
And
that's absolutely right.
And what is that cost?
Well, you know, it will
years.
depend on the inflation rate. And here we go into the same problem.
What do you forecast? You can give me a figure with some plus and minus in it. What do you forecast that number to be?
Well, the inflation rate right now is running at double the target inflation rate. What will it be running in a couple of years? Let's see. But I'll tell you where the savings are going to come from.
Now, hold on. Just give me a number for how much indexing tax will cost the budget bottom line.
Well, it'll be what is necessary to alleviate those numbers that I just described
Angus
to you.
Taylor, how do you restore your economic credentials if you won't put a number on a massive new policy that you're presenting to the
number will
people
depend
tonight?
on the inflation rates we see
What do you
closer to the
expect it to
election,
be?
and we will put our costings closer to the election. But I tell you one thing, Sarah.
Well, we've done some rough calculations on that. And
well, if you want to give me advice on the numbers, go right ahead.
No, they're not my advice, but I'm asking you to confirm that this is correct. The number we've come up with is 20.5 billion over 4 years, growing very fast. In the fourth year, 11.8 billion. So 11.8 billion by 2030, a cost of $22.5 billion. Is that right?
So why did you need to ask me the question?
I wanted to know what number you came up with.
So we can argue about this all day, and we might have different. We might have different numbers. I think what matters is whether there are savings there to pay for it. That's the question.
Well, and how much it is matters to Angus Taylor.
It's true, but it will depend on the numbers you use and the inflation.
You are coming to the Australian people tonight to re-establish your position as the leader of a would-be government. Central to that are your economic credentials. That is the person that you have put forward tonight. So you can tell us how much it's going to be and how you're going to pay for it.
And I've told you again, it will depend on the inflation rate at the time. I don't know how many times I can say that to you.
It's a question of trust.
And then the question is this: how do you pay for it? And there's 4 areas we've been very clear about, and I was very clear about today. And this is the crucial point: ending the corporate welfare that Labor has been pursuing. We've seen endless amounts of this with their National Reconstruction Fund, their so-called Future Made in Australia that's sending industry offshore, ending the housing bureaucracy, the Housing Australia Future Fund, ending the net zero bureaucracy, the climate bureaucracy that this government has created.
You laid out all these elements in the speech tonight. We're at the time where we have to wrap. I note we don't have your numbers, but you've made some bold statements in your speech tonight. There'll be much discussion. I look forward to having you confirm.
You will get our numbers closer to the election, and that is the convention, and you know it.
Angus Taylor, thank you very much indeed.
Good to be with you.